Hey everyone, before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing how global our community is. Now, let's get started. I always thought the scariest thing on a night drive was falling asleep at the wheel. I was wrong. The scariest thing is realizing you might not be the only one in the sea. AR.IT was a little after 3 in the morning when this happened, that hour where the darkness feels heavy and personal. The highway was empty in both directions, just my headlights carving out a pale tunnel ahead, the hum of the tires, and the soft tick of the turn signal I had forgotten to switch off. The air inside the car smelled like stale coffee and cold vinyl. And every time I glanced at the rearview mirror, it looked just a shade darker than the windshield. Like someone had dimmed that piece of reality that I was driving across the state to make a job interview at 8 a.m. sharp. New city, new office, a chance to stop living off instant noodles and overdue favors. I could not afford to miss it. A motel would have eaten the last of my savings, so I told myself I would push through the night. Just this one time. I had done night drives before, but not since the accident years ago when I nodded off for half a second and woke up in an airbagging glass. That memory rode with me like a silent passenger. The GPS screen glowed on the dash, calm and confident. Stay on current road. It said ETA 3:17 a.m. It had been 3:17 for a while. I frowned and tapped the screen, but it just recalculated and landed on the same time again, like the night was refusing to move. My clock on the dash said 3:17 too. I told myself they were just synced badly, even as my stomach did a slow, unpleasant turn. That was when I saw the headlights in the rearview point, two small white points, way back on the straight stretch behind me, where there had been nothing but dark for miles. They were far, but they were there, steady as pinpricks. I felt a weird wave of relief. Another car meant another human being. Maybe a trucker, maybe someone as tired as I was. I watched them for a few seconds before I caught myself and dragged my eyes back to the road. No big deal. Just company. Except whatever they did, I did, and whatever I did, they did. When I eased my foot off the gas, their lights shrank with mine, holding the same exact distance. When I sped up, they did too, never getting closer, never dropping back. The clock on the dash still read 3:17. That tiny tick of the turn signal kept beating like a nervous pulse. I wiped the rear view with the side of my hand, trying to clear a smear I thought I saw, and my fingers brushed cold glass. The smear stayed. It looked, in that second, like the shape of a hand that if you have ever tried talking yourself out of fear while you are alone, you know how pathetic it sounds. I muttered that it was just residue, just a smudge. My voice didn't sound convincing to me either. The radio crackled then, cutting into the quiet with a burst of static and a clipped, official voice. This is an emergency broadcast. Accident on Route 41. Driver trapped. Responders are en route. The signal broke into white noise again. I blinked. I was on Route 41. There were no emergency lights, no flares, nothing. Just me and the shadowy car behind. I pressed the seek button. The same fragment came back. Accident on Route 41. Driver trapped. It felt like the night itself was replaying something I wasn't supposed to hear. The road curved slightly, and my headlights swept over a small white cross on the shoulder, half lost in weeds. Faded flowers. A plastic angel leaning at an angle. I caught my first initial on the name before it slipped past. You see memorials all the time, but that one stuck to me, like I had seen it before, maybe in a dream. The headlights behind me flashed, just a quick strobe of brightness. I flinched, thinking I was drifting out of my lane. I corrected. The horn behind me gave 2 quick blasts. Road rage, I thought, or some drunk impatient idiot. I was doing the speed limit exactly, but whoever they were, they clearly wanted me to move. My hands tightened on the wheel. I did not have the energy for some lunatic tailgater. I pushed the gas. The car surged. Their headlights surged too. pinning themselves to my rear bumper. The radio chose that moment to crackle again. Same flat voice, same message. Except this time at the end I heard, "Driver is not responding. Do not look in the mirror." I froze. That had to be some weird interference, some random coincidence, right? I glanced at the mirror anyway, because that is what people do when you tell them not to. The smear on the glass looked more like fingers now, like a hand pressed from the back seat side. Each fingertip riding a tremor as the car rolled over tiny bumps. I snapped my eyes away and risked a quick look over my shoulder. The back seat was empty. My phone had bars an hour ago. Now it showed no service. I tried anyway, thumb hovering over the emergency call button, but the connection died before it could ring. The highway stretched out ahead, black and endless. No gas stations, no rest areas. One exit appeared, a narrow ramp with a faded closed sign hanging crooked over it. No lights, no sign of life. For a second, I thought about taking it just to get off the road. Instead, I stayed on 41. I told myself cities and people and safety had to be ahead, not down that dead ramp into nowhere. Almost as soon as I passed the exit, the reflectors in the road disappeared. 1 second, I had those comforting little white dashes. The next, it was just my headlights catching dull, worn asphalt. The feeling of being alone with whatever was behind me tightened. When the headlights flashed again, it was more frantic. Long burst, horn blaring. "Fine," I muttered. "You want to pass? Then pass." I put on my blinker and eased onto the shoulder. Gravel crunched under my tires. The car rolled to a stop, engine idling. My heart pounded as I watched the mirror, expecting the other vehicle to roar by and show me the face of the jerk behind the wheel. It stopped too. Same distance, same angle, headlights floating in the dark. I sat there for a moment that felt like a minute. Then I did something I still don't know if I regret. I got out. The air hit me cold and sharp. Highway silence is different at night. It has a weight. My own headlights threw my shadow long across the grass. I walked to the back of my car and squinted down the road. The headlights behind me flickered once, then went out, like someone had flipped a switch. There was nothing there, just black. Every instinct I had told me to get back in the car. But another part of me, the stubborn, tired, angry part, walked forward a few steps. My shoes slipped on gravel. I counted 20 paces, then 30. No car, no tire tracks, no fresh prints. Just an old wreck rusting by the ditch, half hidden in weeds, the metal torn and folded like a crushed can. There was still enough reflective paint on the twisted back panel for me to read the license plate. It was the one I had scratched on a receipt after glimpsing it in that burst of high beams. The road rage driver was not just gone. They had been gone for a long time. I backed away. My skin buzzed like static. I did not want to be out there anymore. I went back to my car, hands shaking, and slid into the seat. The moment the door shut, the clock on the dash flicked back from 3:24 to 3:17. The GPS calmly said, "Continue on current road." I pulled back onto the highway. The headlights were instantly there again in the mirror, much closer this time, almost kissing my bumper. The radio hissed alive, the same voice repeating. "Accident on Route 41. Driver trapped. Responders en route. Driver is not responding." Then, clearer, like the speaker had leaned closer to the mic. "If you can hear this, do not look in the mirror." I stared straight ahead. The smear on the rearview glass was no longer a smear. It was a handprint, distinct and pale, fingers too long, pressed outward. As the car picked up speed, the hand slid slightly, like whatever was attached to it was bracing itself to pull through. I could feel something behind my head, a weight in the air, like cold breath forgotten by the heater. The headlights behind me flashed once, twice, strobing the interior of my car. Every flash turned the handprint a little clearer, a little closer to the edge of the glass, like they were trying to warn me every time it moved. In that moment I understood. The thing in danger was not me. It was my reflection. Whatever sat in my back seat lived in mirrors. In those midnight glances when you check if you are still alone, that I had a choice that did not feel like a choice at all. I could look up, really look, and know exactly what was sitting inches behind my head. Or I could pretend the mirror did not exist and drive blind to whatever crept closer just outside of my sight. Either way, it would be with me. I chose not to look. I fixed my eyes on the faint line where the road met the dark and drove. My eyelids burned. Every instinct screamed to check the mirror, to see if the headlights were still there, to see if the hand had moved, to see if I was about to die. The clock never changed. 3:17 breathed on repeat. The turn signal ticked a slow, merciless heartbeat that I do not know how long I drove like that. Jaw locked, fingers numb, staring dead ahead. At some point, a new sound threaded into the hum of my tires. Another set of wheels on the asphalt. Another engine rising behind me. The light creeping around the edges of my car grew brighter, wider, like a second pair of headlights had joined the first. If you ever find yourself on Route 41 after midnight and notice your ETA stuck on one time, and your mirror looks just a little darker than it should, do me a favor. Do not check who is behind you. Because if my guess is right, I am still out there somewhere, driving in circles at 3:17 a.m., trying not to blink, while something in the back seat learns your name. People always ask me if driving rideshare at night is scary. I tell them the truth. The passengers do not scare me. The passenger door does. For 3 years of night shifts, that front passenger door has never opened once. Not for friends, not for drunk strangers, not even for my mom. It jammed in the crash that almost killed me, and I took that as a sign. Backseat only. Up front stays empty. On a night like this, with the highway empty and the dashboard glow painting everything blue, that rule felt as important as a seat belt. It was a little after 1:45 in the morning, that slow dead stretch before the bars spit everyone out. My car smelled like cheap citrus air freshener and old coffee. The only sounds were the muted whine of the tires and the faint rattle somewhere in the dash. I was one ride away from hitting the bonus that would cover my rent. The app banner at the top of my screen counted down the time like a little ticking bomb. One more trip before 2:30 a.m., it said. One more, or you lose it. That was when the surge pinged. A purple circle bloomed on the map in the middle of nowhere, just outside town, right on the dark stretch of Route 7. The pickup pin sat on a lonely curve I knew too well. Name on the request was Evan. No profile picture, no rating. The note said, "Front seat, please." The fare estimate was almost double what I usually see. I told myself it was just someone desperate for a ride home from a house party. I hit accept anyway, because bills do not care about gut feelings. The second I did, the passenger airbag light flickered from off to on, then back to off again. I stared at it. No one was in the seat. The buckle lay flat, exactly where it always did. A soft click came from the passenger door, the sound of the lock nudging itself without my hand. Once, twice, like it was testing how stuck it really was. My shoulders prickled. I told myself it was just the car's wiring acting up in the cold. I turned onto Route 7. The GPS did something strange. The ETA dropped to 1:58 a.m., then jumped back to 2:03, then froze on 2 o'clock like it was indecisive. I had driven this way 100 times, but tonight the voice rerouted me twice, only to land me back on the same curve. It was as if no matter what, I was supposed to pass that spot. I knew the spot because I had bled on it. 3 years ago, I picked up a man on this road who decided halfway to town that my car was his. He grabbed the wheel, we fought, and the world spun. Passenger side took the hit. He never made it to the hospital. I did. The car was repaired enough to drive, but the front passenger door jammed so hard you would need a crowbar to pry it open. I chose to leave it that way. Tonight, the app pin sat right on that bend. When I rolled up, headlights sweeping the shoulder, there was no one there. Just the suggestion of a field and the faint outline of a roadside memorial cross with something tied to it that fluttered in the wind. No house, No porch lights. No party. My clock read 1:59. The bonus timer in the app pulsed. One ride left. 30 minutes remaining. Like it was daring me to give up. That MY phone buzzed at a text from the in-app number popped up. Front seat, please. It is safer. Every hair on my arms lifted. Another soft click sounded from the locked passenger door, followed by a solid tug that made the entire panel tremble. Someone, or something, had just tried the handle from outside. I swallowed and called out through the cracked window, trying to sound casual. Hey, Evan, backseat only. Front door is broken. No answer. The field breathed cold air at me. Far off, a dog barked one sharp, lonely sound, then quieted. My phone buzzed again. You did not stop last time. That was not the kind of message you get from a drunk college kid. For a moment, anger cut through the fear. I pictured another driver thinking this was hilarious, sending texts from a fake account because everyone in town knew my story. I put the car in park, grabbed my phone as a flashlight, and stepped out into the chill. Gravel crunched under my boots. The night hugged close, thick and soundless, like the world was holding its breath. I walked around the front of my car, lights sweeping the shoulder. No person, no footprints, just old, weathered skid marks and tiny glittering pieces of baked-in glass that looked like they had been there for years. Exactly where my car had spun out. When I turned the beam toward the memorial, I saw a name I recognized and tried not to think about too hard. My attackers. The radio inside the car chose that moment to crackle on by itself. Through the windshield, I heard my name in the static, spoken in a calm, automated voice. Training case, passenger side seat belt failure, driver, my first name. It sounded like a recorded announcement from some safety video, except I had never watched anything like that. The voice faded into static, then silence. I stood, there in the cold, feeling like I had just walked into the wrong side of a mirror. Something knocked 3 times on the passenger door behind me. Not loud, not angry, just a polite, patient knock you would use on a friend's house. I did something then that broke my own rule. I walked back, opened my door, and leaned across the empty front seat. The passenger lock button sat flush, stubborn, and familiar. My fingers closed around it. It vibrated under my touch, as if someone on the other side was pushing it down. For a second, I almost let go. The bonus timer pulsed in the corner of my vision. My rent notice swam up in my mind. Telling myself I was being ridiculous, I yanked the lock up. The button popped free. The passenger door eased open a few inches on its OW and N01 was standing there. Yet the air inside the car shifted like weight settling on a mattress. The seatbelt chime dinged twice. The passenger airbag light flicked to on and stayed there. Cold rolled over my left arm, so sharp that my skin ached. In the dark glass of the window, my reflection looked wrong, like I was seeing myself from a slightly different angle, sitting in a car that was already crushed. I slammed the door and dropped back into my own seat. The lock stayed up now. The app quietly marked the ride as picked up. No one appeared in the rear view, but the space beside me felt occupied in a way I cannot explain. The car tugged, slightly right as I pulled away, like it had gained another body. I drove the rest of my shift with an invisible passenger. There was breathing beside me. Slow, even, never quite matching my rhythm. A few times, near intersections, the seatbelt chime rang once, angry, then stopped on its own. When I glanced sideways, I saw nothing but the curve of the empty seat and the imprint where the fabric dipped a little deeper than it used to. I made rent that month. The app shows that ride from Evan as complete, 5 stars on both sides. The note on my profile says, driver finally stopped. The front passenger door opens easily now. Too easily. Sometimes, when the car is parked and the engine off, I hear the lock click up on its own, like someone remembering how to leave. Next time you sit in the front of a rideshare after midnight, pay attention to the air. If it feels colder by your knees and the airbag light turns on without you, you might be taking the ride that was meant for me. Running out of gas on a lonely highway at night is bad. Finding out the last gas station you stopped at should not exist is worse. That I was moving states when this happened. The kind of desperate midnight haul you do when you are broke and out of options. Everything I owned was packed into the back of my old sedan. If I made it to the new city by 9 a.m., I had a job and a tiny apartment waiting. If I did not, they said the offer was gone and the deposit was non-refundable. Going back meant going back to an ex who had already promised to change and already proven he would not. I was not going back. Rain misted across the windshield, smeared by every lazy swipe of the wipers. The interstate was empty for so long I started to feel like I was the last car on Earth. Inside, the low fuel light glowed a steady amber in the corner of my vision, like an eye refusing to blink. I kept telling myself I would stop at the next well-lit exit, the next cluster of fast food signs and gas prices. The problem was, the sign stopped coming. My GPS chirped a warning. Next services, 60 miles. Under it, a tiny icon I had not seen before blinked into existence. Exit 13, last stop. My stomach dipped. I planned my routes obsessively, and I swear to you, there was no exit 13 on this stretch when I checked earlier. Still, the fuel needle was kissing the red. 30 more minutes of pretending I had a choice, and I would be walking in the dark instead of driving through it. The sign for the exit came up out of the rain like something dredged from memory. Battered green metal, letters peeling, a smaller plate bolted underneath, closed. The ramp itself, though, was wide open, no cones, no barriers, just a curve vanishing into black trees. I told myself the sign was outdated and flicked on my turn signal. The tick of it sounded too loud in the empty car, keeping time with my heartbeat as I took the off-ramp. To the bottom sat a gas station washed in harsh fluorescent light. For pumps, a squat little store with barred windows. Beyond it, only a yawning wall of woods. One of the overhead lights above pump 3 flickered repeatedly, buzzing like a trapped insect. The others glowed steady. Of course, the hand-painted card-only signs were taped to pumps 1, 2, and 4. A crooked, out-of-order paper flapped on each. The only working card reader blinked patiently on pump 3. Under that twitching light I pulled in beside it, because what else was I going to do? When I slid my card, the little screen said authorizing for a long, uncomfortable count. Then it flashed welcome back in a cheery font. I actually laughed out loud at that, the sound thin and wrong in the open air. "Yes, sure," I said. "First time here." If you have ever felt vaguely insulted by a machine, you know the feeling. I glanced up at the store as I waited for the pump to kick on. That was the first thing that really bothered me. In the reflection on the glass door, I could see myself walking inside, shoulders hunched, before I had taken a step. When I blinked, it snapped back to normal. Just a smear of my headlights and a faint smear of my own face. Watching, the handle clicked in my hand, but no gas flowed yet. I figured I might as well grab a drink while it started, so I headed toward the store. Inside, the air smelled like dust and burnt coffee. No music played. No TV murmured. Just the distant whir of coolers along the back wall and a single buzzing fluorescent tube overhead. A round clock hung above the counter. The hands read 1:13. The second hand twitched in place like it wanted to move, but could not. The clerk stood behind the counter, leaning on his elbows. He was middle-aged, heavy lids, the kind of face you forget as soon as you look away. He did not say hello. His eyes flicked over me, then to the door behind me, like he was checking to see if something else had come in. "You picked the wrong exit," he said finally, voice flat. "I just need gas," I answered, trying to sound calmer than I felt. The GPS said this was the last stop. He huffed a breath through his nose. "Yeah, that is one word for it." His gaze darted to the clock, then back to me. "You paying at the pump?" "Yeah, pump 3. That made him straighten. "You sure?" He asked quietly. "You do not want to just get back on the interstate?" Outside, the building shook softly with a low, passing rumble, the sound of something huge moving by. No headlights swept the windows. No engine noise followed. It felt like a truck roaring past far too close. Except there was nothing to see. A board next to the counter caught my eye. Dozens of flyers pinned under yellowing plastic, missing in bold letters on each. All the photos were washed out, caught on what looked like the same security camera angle at this very counter. Different faces, different years. Under some of them, in smaller print, vehicle, make/model/color. One description stopped me cold. Make, Toyota Corolla. Model, 2010. Color, silver. Last seen at exit 13. Last stop. That is not funny, I said before I could stop myself. The clerk's jaw clenched. Not meant to be. He rubbed a hand over his face like he was exhausted. You do not want to be here when the trucks arrive. I heard trucks and thought people. Gangs. Traffickers. The missing drivers. It slammed into my brain in one piece, building a story that made sense in a human way. He had called this place a trap without saying it. Maybe he was in on it. Maybe that was why the GPS insisted this exit existed now. I backed away. You know what? I am just going to go. When I pushed the door open, the little bell did not ring. Outside, the light over pump 3 was flickering more violently now, strobing white on concrete. My car sat there with the nozzle in its tank, hose stretched from the pump, fuel numbers ticking upward. The thing is, I do not remember starting it. My card was still in my pocket. The highway ramp I had come down now sported a metal gate halfway lowered across it. Readout on a little sign. Service vehicles only. I had not heard it come down. There was no other road. My phone showed full bars. I thumbed to call a friend just to ground myself with another voice, but every call dropped at 1 second. Not failed, not voicemail, just cut to silence. The low fuel chime dinged once, even though the gauge now read half a tank, like the car was disagreeing with whatever the pump claimed. Inside the store window, the clerk watched me with a kind of resigned pity. He lifted one hand like he wanted to wave and thought better of it. This place catches people who do not want to go back and do not want to go forward, he said when I cracked my door open enough to hear him. His voice seemed to stretch across the distance without getting louder. They get off here and decide to wait. Then the trucks arrive, and they do not leave. Another rumble rolled through the lot, heavier this time. The far side of the pavement shimmered, lines doubling, then stretching out into a smear of black that looked less like asphalt and more like a tunnel gnawing its way under the station. There were bays drawn in paint, long and narrow, the kind used for semis. But when the shapes pulled in, they had no headlights. No cab windows, just tall black silhouettes on too many wheels, outlined only when lightning flashed behind them. That I told myself it was a storm and my brain was tired. I told myself the clerk and whoever he worked for were trying to scare me into something. I told myself a lot of lies, some of them for your benefit right now, because they are easier to say than what I saw. I made a choice that felt small at the time. I decided to wait out the storm in my car. I told myself I would leave when the rain lightened and the trucks cleared out, whatever they really were. I closed the door, locked it, and sat with both hands on the wheel, feeling the low fuel chime in my bones. The parking lot seemed to stretch farther with every passing minute. New lines appearing beyond the last set, like someone kept copying and pasting the same patch of concrete. Those black truck shapes slipped in and out of that darkness, lining up at pumps that were not really there. The flickering light above my head stuttered wildly as something huge stopped in front of my car. I could not see it exactly, just an absence in the air, a warping of the rain, and the sensation of weight leaning down to peer through the glass. Something pressed at the frame of my door. The radio, which had been dead static, clicked on with crisp clarity. A voice I did not recognize spoke my full name like it was reading it from a document. Then, calmly, last stop. Remain in your vehicle. Every instinct I had screamed to get out of that lot before whatever owned that voice decided to make me stay. I dropped the car into drive, stomped the gas, and yanked the wheel hard right. The tires jumped the curb, scraping over concrete. For a heartbeat, it felt like I was driving through thick mud instead of rain-slick pavement. One of the black shapes pivoted lazily toward me, too slow and smooth to be metal, and I threaded my car between its shadow and the edge of the world. The gate at the ramp was almost fully down now. I ducked under it anyway, metal grinding against the roof, sparks spitting in the mirror as I shot back onto the interstate. Rain washed over the car again. The low fuel light steadied. My GPS recalculated and pretended exit 13 had never existed. Behind me, in the rear view, there was nothing but a blank stretch of tree line. Later, safe in daylight, I tried to prove to myself it was all in my head. I zoomed out on the map, replayed the route. There is an exit 12 on that highway, and an exit 14. Between them, just a plain gray line. No ramp, no services, no name. But I still have the gas station receipt in my glove box. The paper is thin and slick, thermal print already starting to fade. It has my card's last 4 digits, the total for a full tank, and a timestamp. 1:13 a.m. location reads only one thing. Exit 13. Last stop. That if you ever see that on a pump screen, do yourself a favor. Do not wait in the lot to see what pulls in behind you. This last one is the reason I do not trust shortcuts anymore, especially the kind your phone offers you in the middle of the night. It was just after 1 in the morning. The road empty except for me and the occasional burst of fog rising from the ditches. My dashboard glowed a soft, dull orange, turning my hands into strangers' hands on the wheel. The vents rattled every time I went over a seam in the pavement. My phone, wedged in its mount, showed 12% battery and an ETA that felt closer to a threat than a promise. I was on my way to pick up my little sister from an overnight bus in the next town over. She was finishing a late shift and catching the last coach out. Her bus was due in at 2:10 a.m., and the station locked its doors at 2:30. We had already had one ugly incident years back when I left her waiting too long in a parking lot after dark. I had promised, actually out loud, that she would never have to wait alone again. The highway between our towns is simple. 2 lanes, a handful of exits, and not much else. I had driven it 100 times. But tonight the fog was thicker and the road felt longer. My GPS chirped and the cheerful navigation voice said, "A faster route is available. Save 13 minutes." A thin blue line appeared, branching off to the right onto a side road I did not recognize. No name, no number, just unnamed road. I looked up and saw only trees and guardrail. No junction, no streetlight, nothing but dark. But as my headlights swept through the mist, I caught something odd in the windshield reflection. For a second, in the glass, I saw a pale strip of road peeling off to the right, wet and narrow, sitting where there was only blacktop in front of me. "Turn right now," the voice said, perfectly calm. I stayed straight. My fingers tightened on the wheel. The GPS recalculated, thought about its life choices, and then redrew the same suggestion. In 500 feet, turn right. There was still nowhere to turn. The mile marker ahead said 42. A few minutes later, another marker slid by, and it said 41. Then, impossibly, the next one said 42 again. If you have ever been exhausted enough that the world feels like a dream, you know how easy it is to tell yourself that you misread things. That was what I did. I told myself the signs were wrong, or I had blinked. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister. "Just left the last stop. See you soon, right? If you get lost, just stay on the main road, okay?" I typed back a little thumbs up I did not feel. The GPS did not give up. "Turn right." It repeated, each time more insistent, though the tone never changed. Somewhere under that voice, very faint, I thought I heard another one. Lower, a fraction slower, repeating the same instructions a beat behind. "Turn right. Turn right." It almost sounded like someone humming along with a song they did not know the words to when I tried to switch apps, hoping a different map would shake the feeling. The new one snapped to the same view instantly. The shortcut was already there, labeled Unnamed Road, recommended. I had never saved it. The little banner at the top flashed, time saved, 13 minutes, like it was proud of itself. My ETA to the bus station stayed frozen at 2:06 a.m. No matter how long I drove, the highway around me emptied completely. No headlights approached, none followed. The radio could not seem to hold a station. Every frequency fizzled into a whisper of static and voices I could not quite understand. Fog crowded the shoulders, a soft wall that seemed to press closer each time I ignored the next turn now. Then, on the next recalc, the road appeared 0.1 second there was only trees. The next, my headlights spilled over a narrow opening in the guardrail that I could have sworn was not there before. Gravel shouldered into the dark, damp and pale, like someone had poured a fresh path out of concrete dust. My windshield reflection matched it perfectly. In the glass, the blue GPS line lay exactly over that opening. Waiting patiently that I thought about my sister sitting under harsh fluorescent lights, checking the station clock. I thought about the empty highway behind me, the battery icon creeping lower, the promise I had made. I told myself it was a local's only service road, maybe a maintenance access. I told myself if it went nowhere, I could turn back. You know how we do that in our heads. Pretend decisions are reversible. I put on my signal and took the turn. The crunch of gravel under my tires sounded too loud, like the noise had nowhere else to go. Fog folded around the car in a slow, thick swirl. The trees on either side leaned in, branches knitted overhead, cutting off the sky until my headlights felt like the only light left in the world. The pavement under the gravel turned slick, the car humming differently as it rolled over it. A small post slid by on the right, white paint peeling. Instead of a number printed on it, someone had scratched -1 into the surface. The next post said -2. My eyes jumped back to the phone. The ETA was still 2:06 a.m. My battery still said 12%. I saw the hatch marks next. Faint white slashes painted onto the center of the road in groups of 5, like chalk tallies on a jail wall. I drove over one cluster, then another, then realized I recognized the pattern of cracks in the third set. I had already passed those exact markings. The gravel looked disturbed in the same way, like someone had skidded slightly and corrected. The air in the car felt heavier, like I was driving downhill when the road looked flat. That was when I saw the CAR.IT was half buried in brush. Nose stuck in a shallow ditch, back end angled up like it had tried and failed to climb out. The rear window was shattered, glittering shards clinging to the frame. Even in the fog, I could see the color. The same dull silver as my car. The same rust spot over the wheel. Same bumper sticker curling at the edge. That is not mine, I said out loud, because hearing it made it sound like a fact that I should have turned around right there. Instead, I told myself a story that made it survivable. Lots of cars look alike. Somebody else had a bad night. I would call it in when I reached the station. My sister still needed me. I kept going, hands a little too tight on the wheel. Behind me, in the mirror, the fog stirred. For a heartbeat, I saw taillights glowing red, perfectly aligned with mine, as if another car was following at the exact same speed. The driver's seat in that reflection looked empty. My phone buzzed again. Static hissed through the speakers, even though I had not answered. Under the static, my sister's voice said, "If you get lost, just stay on the main road, okay?" The same words as her earlier text, but twisted, slower. As if someone unfamiliar with her mouth was trying them on. My battery icon flickered and jumped from 12% to 1% without passing anything in between. The road curved gently left. The trees opened just enough for my headlights to catch on a shape up ahead. Another car in the ditch. Same angle, same color, same broken glass, same crooked bumper sticker. Fresh tallies painted in the road just before it. A new set of 5 white slashes gleaming like teeth. That I did not believe in anything supernatural until that moment. I believed in bad choices and bad wiring and bad people. Looking at that second wreck, Feeling my own hands on the wheel, I realized something was tallying how many times someone had taken this shortcut and not made it back. The GPS voice cleared its throat. Then, in my sister's tone, it whispered, "Almost there. Turn around when possible," like a joke that was not funny at all. That I understood suddenly that every time someone chose this road over the safe, boring main route, it added another layer of failure on top of the last one. Another version of this car. Another body that might have kept a promise if they had stayed on the highway. I could keep driving and become one more tally mark, or I could do something I hated. That I took my foot off the gas and let the car roll to a stop in the middle of the unmarked road. That I put it in park. Turned off the headlights. The world went black except for the faint glow of the phone and the dim green of the instrument panel. My heart hammered in my ears. Fog pressed against the windows like fingers. Somewhere ahead, a twig snapped under something that was not me. The GPS asked me one more time, very politely, if I wanted to resume navigation. I powered the phone off. For a while, I just sat there, eyes shut, gripping the wheel, not moving at all. At some point, the panic thinned into a strange quiet. It felt like the world had taken a step back to see what I would do without its voice whispering in my ear. When I opened my eyes again, I was parked on the shoulder of the main highway, hazard lights blinking into the dark. The side road was gone, replaced by an unbroken railing and a wall of trees. My phone lay dead in the cup holder. The clock on my dash had jumped ahead. 2:22 a.m. I was late. I drove like a maniac for the next few miles, heart in my throat, sure my sister would hate me. When I reached the bus station lot, she was sitting under the yellow lights with a bored security guard, who told me the bus had been delayed and only just pulled in 5 minutes before. On the drive home, she fell asleep in the passenger seat, breathing softly. I plugged my phone in. When it finally woke up, I checked my navigation history, just to see if I had imagined everything. There was no record of any alternate route. No unnamed road. Between town and town, only a straight blue line. But in my saved locations, tucked at the bottom of a list I never made, there was a faint gray pin labeled "Recently Visited." No address, no rating, no photos, just 2 words. Unnamed road. That if your GPS ever offers you a shortcut that is not on the map and the road only shows up in the glass, do me a favor. Be late. Some promises are better broken than buried. Some stories sound like urban legends until you notice how they line up with the little fears you already carry every time you drive at night. Headlights that follow too perfectly. A passenger door that does not want to stay shut. A gas station sign you do not remember passing in daylight. A road your GPS swears is there, even when your eyes say it is not. If you made it this far with the lights off, you and I both know sleep might not come easily tonight. But that is kind of why we are here, right? There is something about sharing these stories, alone together in the dark, that makes the world feel just a little bit sharper when the sun comes up again. That if any of these night drive stories reminded you of something that happened to you, or almost happened, tell me about it in the comments. I read every one, and sometimes the things you share are scarier than anything I could write. Until next time, drive safe, trust your instincts more than your apps, and maybe do not look too long into the rear view tonight.